Hoops through life. Hoops through life.
Welcome to another episode of Hoops Through Life, a podcast where we discuss everything related to women's basketball player development, the collegiate recruiting process, and transition from high school to college. I'm your host, Elsbeth Bierman. Our guest today is Coach Anthony Tucker. Anthony played for the University of Iowa and Minnesota State University Moorhead, where he was named to the All-Conference and All-Region teams. After college, Anthony had an 11-year professional career, spanning 9 countries, including 4 finals appearances, 1 MVP award, 1 scoring title, and 3 assist titles. He also played in the NBA G League for the Windy City Bulls. His coaching experience spans from AAU to high school varsity, and he is the founder and head trainer at Hoop Habits, whose training method is designed to not only develop skills, but to teach athletes how to apply their training techniques and concepts to live game situations. And in the fall of 2025, he will enter his first season as the head coach of the Holy Family Catholic High School girls basketball program. So congratulations on that. Coach, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Great introduction.
All right, so let's just jump into it. Tell us a little bit about Hoop Habits. How are you all a little bit different from other player development companies or trainers? I know in the intro I mentioned about the live game situations. That's something that I think already sets you apart. But yeah, just tell us a little bit more about that.
I think the main thing that sets us apart is we have our own training facility. So we're able to kind of use our space to touch all aspects, and we call them the 5 pillars of player development, which for us consists of on-court, like skills training, obviously, but the sports performance piece, nutrition, we do sports mindset training and recovery as well. So for us, it's more about kind of rounding out the complete package and making sure that we're touching all points of what basketball is and what it means to us.
Yeah, that sounds like a super holistic approach. What made you want to take it in that direction as opposed to try to like working in a silo in a sense?
I was fortunate enough to have an incredible mentor when I was playing. Chris Carr, he played for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I started working with him when I was 14. And he kind of took that approach with me in teaching me more than just the on-court skill stuff. It was everything from, lifting weights to which, as a 14, 15-year-old kid is something brand new to most kids at that age. So just learning about, the body and how it moves, and then how nutrition fuels the body and how that's directly correlated to your performance and stuff. And then the sports mindset piece was kind of a organic thing that came with it, and just being able to talk through situations with him and talk about feelings and situational aspects. And so all of that stuff. And then the recovery piece was also something that, as a 14 or 15-year-old kid, you just don't know much about. And so I was just fortunate enough to learn the game that way. So that's kind of how I viewed it, since then. And so for me, it's important to be able to give that back to people.
So with that whole approach, what do you find is the biggest knowledge gap with the athletes? And maybe also mention the age group of athletes that you work with too. And then what's that biggest knowledge gap? If you look at that, I think you said five pieces of player development. Like I just think about a wheel and it like the spokes of the wheel. Where's the biggest knowledge gap in that wheel?
Nutrition, far and away. I think we've come a long way as a whole, just from, the fitness industry now to, fitness influencers. And it's become kind of I don't know, people have kind of made fitness and nutrition cool where it wasn't necessarily before. But I still think there's just so much that we don't talk about, or that's not part of like general education with nutrition. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that we see is just the stuff we talk about with nutrition with our players and even the parents and stuff, and the amount of wide-eyed expressions we get when we start explaining, different things, of protein intake or things like that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Sports performance piece, I think, is the biggest thing missing from like an athlete that, your average athlete's regimen. I don't think that they do enough to improve their bodies. I think basketball players, we think we can get on the court, do skills training, and that it's going to translate. But there is a strength and agility and mobility component that goes hand in hand with it. That's really important too.
How do you navigate an athlete who maybe is growing in adding in that sports performance piece, like understanding development and those other aspects of like a young person growing into an adult?
I think the most important piece of that is that like people need to learn and be able to move correctly. Like you can't build strength if you're not moving correctly, or there's if there's no foundation to build on top of. So a huge thing for us is teaching proper movement, functional body movements, correcting running form, correcting posture, things like that, so that when you start adding in the strength component to it, we're building on a solid foundation.
Yeah, I always thought it would be interesting to have like a youth program that maybe is year round, but the foundation was like gymnastics because I felt
Mhm.
like that did a really good job of teaching athletes how to fall, how to land properly, all of those little things that could result in injury. I work with primarily females, and so I was also thinking about it from that lens of like knee injuries, things like that. And there's like other components to too that I think would be cool, but based on what we're talking about, like that foundation of gymnastics, I thought would be super awesome.
For sure. And I think that's a huge piece too, is, I'm a huge proponent of people playing multiple sports or doing different activities that teach different movements so that we're not falling into patterns. And, as basketball players, you see a lot of like tight hips and a lot of bad posture and stuff. So anybody that can get out and do other things that teaches different movement and works on, trains other muscle groups and stuff, I think they see the benefits of it more so than someone who just specializes in one thing.
Yeah, and I like what you said at the beginning about like the performance and nutrition aspect of it kind of becoming more cool. Because even, 5, 6 years ago, I remember I would always be talking about like stretching and recovery. And like the players on the team would just like sneak pictures of me, like maybe because like you said, tight hips, we'd be like waiting at a restaurant and I'm like, my hips are so tight, I can't sit on this bus anymore. And I'd be like stretching and they'd be like sneaking pictures of me, like making fun of me, like, oh, look, Coach L is stretching or whatever. But like, yeah, so I think we have come a long way where it's like, it's not cool to not be able to touch your toes, right?
I would say, yeah, I would say that's a huge thing is, like just in the whole fitness influencer, just fitness industry space, like making it something that, like you're saying, like people used to think it was weird if someone was stretching extra or doing more, or um, we had a kid at Holy Family when I was coaching on the boys' side a couple years ago that was bringing, I mean, he would have Tupperware of food and carry it throughout the day, and he would eat, he was trying to gain weight, so he was eating multiple meals a day. And I remember like faculty making comments about it and stuff. And then finally being able to explain and for them to understand, like, hey, he's got a goal in mind and this is what it's going to take to hit it. And then, as time went on, people kind of accepting it and being like, oh, yeah, he's just, this is what he's doing, or having other people kind of step in and like advocate for him, like, oh, yeah, he's got to eat his meal real quick and stuff. So, um, I think, yeah, like I said, we've come a long way from the like when I was in high school and playing, and it was like, hey, let's go have a huge pasta dinner the night before the game and carb load and not realize and have zero protein, but let's just eat two bowls of pasta and a Caesar salad and realizing now that like protein intake is probably the most important fuel for our body and stuff. And so it's just kind of like the changing of the guard and just learning more and nutrition being a really important aspect to the performance piece.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I just remember when I was in high school, there was this little like mall-ish type area. And so sometimes we would run there like right before practice and just eat the worst thing we could possibly eat, like a I don't know, like Chick-fil-A or whatever fast food restaurant was right there, just because it was like easy and convenient, not thinking twice about it and not really understanding the impact that had like on our games.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
is there anything that you had wished that you had started doing earlier in your development that you think might have paid off long term?
Not really, from the simple fact that like I said, I was really lucky in having someone that showed me those things at an early age. I would say that the thing that I stress the most is the sports performance. Like, I know kids don't want to lift weights and do the agility piece and the mobility and anything hard really. And so um that's the one thing I would say that I think is the most important thing that you could really put a lot of focus on is making sure that you're including that in your workout stuff. So like getting on the court is great. Yeah, there's kids that work really hard and get on the court 4 or 5 days a week, multiple times a day and stuff. But also it's like they're not building any strength and you're really just beating your body down. So I would just say like for me, I think if anything, I wish I probably would have lifted a little harder. I don't know, lifted a little bit more and a little bit harder, just to build strength at a younger age.
Hmm. What would you say is like the youngest athlete that you work with?
Uh, Probably 9 years old.
How do you build that strength piece with a 9-year-old? Like, does it look like, oh, we're just doing body weight stuff? Like, what does that look like for you all?
I think for the youngest kids, it's more functional movement. It's more like it's a lot of stuff that's teaching them like posture is a huge thing and running form and stuff. And I think those are really critical pieces of the strength piece. I'm not a sports performance coach, so I don't pretend to know any more than what I actually know or anything, but I just think like the biggest thing is teaching kids how to run and jump correctly. Like I think that's as important as any body weight exercise or anything. If you can run correctly, then you can start to run faster. If you can jump correctly, you can start to jump higher. And so yeah, I think just teaching those things at a really young age is really important. And then, like I said, once you build that foundation, then you can start to build on top of it.
So let's say there's an athlete who maybe doesn't have somebody like you who is really taking this holistic approach and trying to, because it really sounds like, okay, this is the foundation of what we need to accomplish. Like if we want to get to level 10, we got to start at level 1, right? Like I can't take you anywhere if we can't, if every time we land, you're like hyperextending your knees, like that's not going to work, right? So what's something maybe that you could recommend or suggest to a young athlete, let's say middle school or high school, who maybe doesn't have somebody like you in their life and they're just kind of on their own trying to figure it out?
I would say the beauty of the technology age that we're in is you can find a lot of information on the internet. There's really good videos on YouTube from really smart people giving a lot of information for free on things that you can do to work on those things, to work on proper techniques, to work on mobility, flexibility, things like that. So I would say find find those people on YouTube or on whatever platform you're using and try to build your own regimen, something that works for you. If there's something you need to focus on. I mean, and maybe this doesn't apply to 9 or 10 year old, but 14, 15, 16, like focus on if you're trying to get faster, find someone that's really good on the internet with, speed and running technique and foot turnover and just like stuff like that, where you can kind of build your own regimen for like, hey, this is what I want to work on, and this is the person I'm going to follow, and I'm going to really implement these steps that they're talking about, and I'm going to try to improve on my own.
Is there anybody maybe in that space? Because I think I agree with you that there's so much information out there, like
Yep.
use it, right? Like use the resources that you have. But I can also recognize if I were to Google search how to run faster or something like that, 1,000 things will come up. So sometimes it can be super, super overwhelming and you don't know who to listen to. Is there anybody in this space that you can think, and it's okay if you can't, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but is there anybody in this space that you can think of where, oh, that might be a good follow, or this person has really good information? Or even just how to separate like good, not like appropriate from non appropriate information?
One thing that for me that really worked was I was overseas. I was in Taiwan playing, and I developed like a pretty severe case of patellar tendonitis. Like it was almost debilitating. Like I was every day, it took a lot for me to get on the court. A lot of warm-ups and activations and treatments and all kinds of stuff. So I actually found like the knees over toes program. Um, I think I actually found it on Instagram, and I think I ended up purchasing the program. It was super affordable, and started implementing those exercises into my daily like warm-up routine, and I found success with it. And so it's stuff like that where I think it's going to take a little bit of uh I don't know, due diligence, I guess, to kind of check credibility, but also, I mean, you can tell by reading reviews, you can tell by how many views it has, you can tell by uh just kind of the I don't know, the professional approach that they take to it and stuff. But I do agree. I think like there's so much information, it can be overwhelming. But again, I think you have to be very specific and very intentional with what you're trying to accomplish. And then I think it narrows it down a little bit.
And I think too, something that you just mentioned that made me think of it is also try it out. Like try it out for a month, and if it helps, keep doing it. If it doesn't help, stop doing it and
Right,
try
exactly.
something else, right? But I think that goes back to another point, another theme that I'm seeing here too is just being intentional and proactive about what you want and then creating some sort of a plan to implement it. And so I think a good time to try something like that, like let's say you're having pain, would be maybe a month, like doing something consistently for a month. And then if you see results, as I said, all right, let's keep going, or let's continue to follow this person or listen to what they have to say. And if not, it doesn't mean that they're bad, maybe just is not right for you.
Right. And I mean that's part of like in naming the gym and stuff, like the habits piece came from like the consistency in which you do something. And so I think that's a big thing too is try something, try it for a set period of time, but be consistent with it. Like give stuff a chance to work. Don't try it once or twice and say, I don't know. Or if you try it once and you don't like it, move on to something else, but give that other thing a chance. And so yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's the main thing is that like try something, be consistent with it, give it like a fighting chance to work for you, and then I think you'll find the things that do work for you, and then you, like I said before, you can kind of start to build your own plan and implement those things.
I have a question, and maybe like I can see potentially an answer, but I'd love for you to maybe expand on it or, put your own words to it. Because you've played at all different levels, you've coached kids at different levels. What are some of the common like mindsets or behaviors that really separates the athletes who are either coachable or do really well, see a lot of success in those who don't?
The piece for me, I think that sets people apart is the consistency in which they do things. I think that there are a lot of kids or players that work really hard. I don't know that everyone knows what working hard means, and also that working hard doesn't necessarily yield results. You have to work smart and work in a direction. And I think consistency matters too. So the kid that shows up, 3 days a week, but doesn't touch a ball outside of that, but works really, really hard when they're here, might not yield the same results as the person that does a little bit every day. And they might not understand why, because they're saying, well, I'm working really hard. I come in 3 days a week and I do this. But there's players that like really take it seriously and take the advancement and development piece seriously with the stuff they do outside of working hard. And that's where we built those pillars in, because for us, it's the nutrition piece and stuff. Nutrition, the recovery pieces, those are outside of what we do. Like that's stuff you have to do on your own. That's stuff you, like you're saying, like you get off the bus and your hips are tight. Like you have to stretch. You can't just sit there and think it's going to go away, or so I think the consistency piece, to me means more than just how frequently you do something. It's kind of the consistency in which you carry it throughout your day or your week or whatever, in how you kind of stack habits on top of each other.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, and this might be like totally left turn, but I promise I'll bring it back. It kind of reminds me of like when I was in college and I was studying for a test, and I would sit there and I would be like, okay, this is my time to study for this neuroscience test that's coming up. And I would study and sit there. And then, but what I realized was if I related, and it's easy because like the brain neuroscience, that's something you can apply to like many different things. But I realized, oh, if I walk around and just relate that to other things that are going on throughout the day, it just sinks in so much deeper and I can like understand it. And it turned into, I'm not studying this 1 hour block. Yes, maybe I may do some intensive like 1 hour block studying, but I take that studying and apply it to almost everything else that I do. And it was hard. Like I'm not gonna lie and be like it wasn't kind of annoying at times, but it's like that learning that way just helped it sink in for me a little bit deeper. And I think that's kind of what you're saying too.
100%. And like one thing my mom always tried to get me to do, I will admittedly say I never did it. In school was like when you take your textbook home or whatever and you're studying for a test and it's on this chapter or this, subject matter or whatever. She'd be like, "Why don't you read the next chapter?" Like it's probably going to double back and start talking about some of the stuff that you just learned or start to, build on top of that. So if you can start to read ahead and understand some of that stuff, then also when you go over it in class, it's not brand new, like foreign material to you. It's something that you might not understand it, but it's something that is familiar and stuff. And I think that's the same thing with this is like being able to tie those things together and seeing how they all relate to each other and seeing that they like one thing does benefit the other. So yeah, if you if you come in and you're really tight, like your workout's probably not going to be as good as it could have been. And so yeah, that like recovery piece that you took seriously the night before allows you to go in and advance your performance and continue to build on top of that. So
Yeah, how do you get that buy-in kind of from some of the athletes? Because I can imagine that they've always lived their life this way, right? They've always never stretched, so they're probably always tight. They don't understand the benefit because they've never seen it because this is their life, right? So how do you, and also they're kids. Like you don't expect them to really be able to put all of those pieces together. So I just imagine it as like stepping stones. How do you gradually guide them to this place of, okay, now they're taking ownership of what they need to do on their own?
I think development builds excitement. So I think when players start to feel like they're getting better on the court, I think that buy-in comes kind of organically. Um, as you start to see results, you start to want more. And so I think that's probably the biggest, I would say the easiest way to get people to buy in is that they see results from, whether it's their shooting improved or their ball handling or they feel like they're able to move better or do something that they couldn't do before. Then it's on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And then it's kind of a snowball effect. And, at that point, then you might have kids that start thinking about playing at a higher level than they're playing at. And so I think for us, like that's the easiest way to get buy-in is to just deliver results.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's yeah, just like anything. Once you see that momentum going, it's like, oh, now I'm doubling down and now I really want to do this. So, but it sounds like you all don't have any issues really going from like step 0 to 1, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I think kind of the beauty of being a training facility and stuff is like people like we were just talking about, people might come and try it and not like it and then not come back. Or, they come and they try it and they like it and they stay. And then, a result of them staying is that they see some of the other players that are coming through the door and they're like, hey, I want to be that person or I want to be as good as them or I want what they have. And so that also is another kind of selling point for people to continue to work hard is seeing person next to them that's doing something that might be at a little bit higher level and saying, hey, how can I get to that level?
Yeah, that makes sense. Where where do you think a lot of like high school programs or even just other people in this space might get it wrong as it pertains to player development?
I think the biggest thing I see is not being able to explain why to people. And I think that is a huge issue in the player development space is that I think there's a lot of people that are in the space that have memorized ways of teaching things and aren't able to do it themselves and have never done it before. Therefore, they cannot explain the why or the what happens if this happens. And so that's a frustrating piece, I think, to me because I played and I worked with a lot of trainers, and there were a lot of trainers that would tell me to do something, and if I said why, there was not an answer. And so, um, yeah, to me, I think I think anybody can memorize or watch a video and say, "Hey, I'm going to turn around and show that to somebody." But if there's no like in-game application or no real experience or explanation for why it works or what, how to counter it or what would happen if this happened, I don't think there's a ton of value. And I'm 100% not saying if you've never played basketball, you can't train people or what. I'm just saying that if you are trying to show somebody how to do something, be prepared to answer questions that go along with it and not just say, well, that's just the move or that's just how you do it. And so that goes to anything. Like if you're cooking something and you're missing an ingredient, you have to try to improvise and figure out, how to make it work. You can't just make it and just be like, well, I'm just going to make it this way anyway. And so I think that's a huge thing that happens a lot. I see it a lot. I have a lot of experience training, um, both as a player and as a trainer, but I just think there's not a lot of thorough explanation given a lot of times.
Yeah, because the other thing I was going to ask too, and is like, how can an athlete know, if this trainer is knowledgeable and able to help them, or maybe not as knowledgeable? Not from what I'm hearing you say is just kind of asking questions, and if they can't answer your questions about why maybe you're doing a certain drill or whatever, then maybe it's time to look elsewhere. Is there anything else you would add to that list of red flags, green flags when working with a trainer?
I just think open dialogue. Like if you can't have a conversation during a workout and get explanations and stuff, like I mean, there's times when I'm training even really high level players and they're like the wheels are spinning and they're not really processing like how to do something or when it would be applicable or like I don't know. And I just think the best workouts that we have are the ones where there's open dialogue and there's explanations and there's a, hey, I'm more comfortable doing it this way. And it's a, well, if you do it that way, this is what's going to happen versus if you do it this way and stuff. So I think those open dialogues are so important. Um, I don't, I'm not a huge like I'm not a huge advocate of being like, hey, red flags, green flags with trainers, and like, hey, if he don't go to this person because they do this or what, because I think everyone, like you said, everyone's trying to help people. I also think everyone can add value. Like, I think that it could be someone who doesn't know a ton about basketball, but they're really, really good at a certain a certain piece, and like they can add value in that piece. And I think that no matter who you're working with, as long as you're working, I think it matters. But I would just say I would be very cautious of the people that either A, aren't willing to have those conversations and like open the dialogue and they shut down questions, or B, you ask them enough questions and get enough I don't knows, then I would say you maybe want to move on.
So if you're looking at like next generation of basketball players, we can include male and female, and if you want to split it up because you might have two separate answers, that's fine too. What kind of excites you the most, and what concerns you the most about even just kids you see coming up in your program?
Um, Athletic ability is at an all-time high. Um, I would say advanced skill level is at an all-time high. incredibly concerning how bad some kids are fundamentally. Um, it's kind of a running joke here, but like we have some really good players that can't do a basic layup. Like just simply can't do it. Like their brain can't grasp like, hey, I'm going to do a right hand layup and I'm going to jump off my left foot. It's like because they've mastered the advanced techniques of same hand, same foot layups, or always Euro stepping or changing direction or whatever. And so it's a really unique thing because players are as talented as ever, but really, really struggle to do really basic things, which is I think it's an incredibly unique thing because I don't know how many other sports you can do really advanced stuff without being able to do basic fundamental stuff.
And I remember last time we talked about that a little bit too. And yeah, it just goes back to like what we talked about earlier of like level one versus level 10. And then I would also add, it's like it's not about like you have to be able to like shoot a right-handed layup off of the left foot, but you need to be able to do it when it's appropriate because that just adds variability to your game. It adds a layer of, oh, if the defense is here, I can finish this way, but if the defense is here, I can always also finish that way. And I know last time we talked a little bit about creativity as well, that being kind of lacking. Is there anything more you wanted to say about that or explain that a little bit more too?
Yeah, I love creativity. Like I think it's the most important thing. I can't tell you how many phone calls, emails, texts we get asking, "Hey, I have a 7-year-old that I would love to get some one-on-one training for," and I simply won't do it. Like I don't think it's appropriate. Like I think the best thing you can give a 7-year-old kid is a ball and a hoop and their imagination. I don't think that there's anything that you can teach a 7-year-old kid that they need to be doing a certain way. Like I think there's such a creativity piece and there's such a need for imagination and creativity in basketball that I really do think you can stunt the growth of players by starting them training too early. And so I do think there's a huge lack of creativity just with how big training has gotten and how important it is to people to be training and working specifically with people and stuff. And so I didn't have a trainer until I was 14. I mean, I never worked with anybody. I spent so much time alone with a basketball and a hoop and just making up stuff in my mind and creating scenarios and stuff. And as a result, I was a pretty creative basketball player. Not overly athletic. I have a shooting, I guess, is a superpower, but just an imagination where I'll try just about anything. Um, and I think that's missing. And I guess the reason I probably feel so strongly about it is because I played so long in Asia, in China and Taiwan, where there's zero creativity. There's absolutely zero. Like the basketball players are robots. They don't think outside the box. They don't ever try anything that would be something that someone hasn't like drilled into them. And it's such a unique way to view the game. And so yeah, I'm probably hypersensitive to it, but also I think it's probably the most important thing in basketball is being able to be creative and to think on the fly and to react and to adjust. So it's the way I coach as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that too. And if you do have an athlete, I'm saying n not you, but like listener, if you do have an athlete who is like 6, 7, 8 years old and you do want that training piece, I would just encourage you to think about that has to look so different than what a 14-year-old would do. Like I would hope that that trainer would, like you said, foster that creativity. Maybe the workout looks a little bit differently. Maybe it's a group. Maybe there's multiple people so you can play off of one another. And the environment is a creative environment instead of a like do this move this way and finish this way or whatever. Like allow them to explore because I agree that's the most important thing, especially at a young age.
Agreed.
And all right, so I have a last couple of questions that I ask all the guests. So what book or podcast would you recommend every young athlete read or listen to, and why?
There's a book. It is called uh, Stuff Good Players Should Know. And it was written by Dick DeVenzio, I
Hmm.
believe. And it is like an A to Z. I think this it actually says this on the cover, but like an A to Z book of like it's like a glossary of terms, but also like an explanation of everything. And I think for like a basketball nerd, like it's all stuff you know or that you're familiar with, but just like having something there, like it's easy to sit down and read it and be like, I just read 100 pages and I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't realize that I was reading for 45 minutes because you're just reading stuff that's like super interesting to you. And so like that's a book for me that I've probably read it 4 or 5 times, and um it's one I recommend to new coaches too. I'm like, just be familiar with everything. Like it's something that like there's nothing in that book that's gonna like steer you the wrong way.
Yeah, I love that one too. And it's like something where you can, like you said, it's kind of like a glossary where you can like look up something very specific, turn to the page and read it and be like, oh, wow. Like in 2 pages or one paragraph, it
Yeah.
tells you something and then you can put it down. Or like you said, just kind of read through it. But it goes by like category too. So if there's something really specific you want to learn about or read about, it's there. And I think it does a really nice job of just breaking down those concepts into really digestible pieces.
Yeah. And it was written like a while ago too. Like it's not like a new book is the other
No.
thing. That's kind of the weird thing about it is I want to say it was written like the late 80s, maybe early 90s, something. It's like a fairly old book.
All right, if you could make one rule that all basketball coaches and trainers had to follow, what would it be and why?
Take a break, like unplug at some point. Be a human. Spend time with people outside of, your players or your other coaches or your other trainers or whatever. Refresh your perspective. At least I don't know if I'm making a rule, I guess, and have to put like a a finite it's like take a weekend off at some point where there's no basketball allowed. And I'm incredibly fortunate. I have an amazing wife and an amazing son that I get to go home to and just not think about basketball and get to come back every day with like new perspective. And Um, but I would say that's the number one thing is like you can drive yourself crazy and you can overthink and you can uh underappreciate and just fall into a very weird place if you don't take some time away at some point.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, yeah. Oh, actually, before we end, is there anything, if people wanted to get in touch with you or learn a little bit more about you, where might they be able to do that?
Our website, www.hoophabits.com, has all information regarding training. Our AAU website, hoophabitselite.com, has all information regarding our AAU program. You can follow us on Instagram. My Instagram is _ant_Tucker. I believe the Hoop Habits one is no, I'm sorry, it's just at Hoop Habits Training. Um, Way too many social media handles to memorize all of them. But yeah, we're social media. You can get in touch with us. There's all types of contacts, contact information and stuff. But yeah, that's probably the best place.
All right, perfect. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you so much for being here. And yeah, just thank you again.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you aren't already, I would highly recommend subscribing to the podcast so you can get updated once new episodes are dropped. If you're a fan of the show, go ahead and leave a review. It really helps spread the word to more athletes, parents, and coaches. Now, if you have any questions for myself or future guests, feedback, or you're curious on how we can work together to help you reach your basketball goals, let's have a conversation. Feel free to email me at l@hoopsthroughlife.com today to set that up. That's el@hoopsthroughlife.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.